Hello everyone, Daniel here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for Astonishing Times Rise of Kokin. This is a new book spinning out of the pages of Astonishing Times. So if you haven't read this, you don't necessarily need to have read this to get into the story. But it will give you, especially knowing everything that happens to this character later on, I think it'll give you a really, really good idea of where this characters come from. But let's talk about the creative team before we get into this book. This book is written by Frank J. Barbary and Aris Quinones, art by Rory Coleman, colors by Roman Stevens, letters by Taylor Sposito, and design by Dylan Todd. So, as I mentioned, this is a book that is a prelude to everything we saw in Astonishing Times, specifically focusing on this character. Now, before I get into the description of this video, you may know that Aris Quinones is the host of the Variant YouTube channel. So when he originally announced that he was doing the first book, I was very excited because I've been a big fan of the channel for a long time. I've met Aris a few times because he is local to my area. So it's really cool that I found out that there's a new book coming out through Comixology Originals. So let's talk about this specific issue. Spinning out of the pages of the smash hit Astonishing Times from Frank J. Barbary and Aris Quinones with Rory Coleman on art, Rise of Kokin tells the story of Kokin, the mysterious cybernetic samurai. The story spans Kokin's life from the start as a young boy all the way to the powerful warrior we see in the pages of Astonishing Times. All will be revealed as we learn who trained him, where he comes from, and what he fights for. So yeah, I mean, if you've been reading comic books for a long time, this is Kokin's like year one story, and it's great. I was a big fan of the original series, and this was one of the standout characters to me. Like, really is one of the coolest characters in that series. So diving back into this, it's a perfect place to expand this universe, right? I think there's a lot of very interesting characters in Astonishing Times, but this one definitely is the perfect place to kind of kick things off and kind of keep working on some more. I think because these are creator-owned characters, both Barbary and Quinones really understand and have probably plotted out where all these characters, what their motivations are. So this feels very much like a very natural expansion to that universe, which I think it's very much appreciated. Sometimes with books like these, some side characters may be given out to different creators where they may not have the same plans. I feel like as the original creators, they probably had at least some idea of what these characters, where they were coming from, and some of these stories that we're about to see. So very exciting stuff. This issue has a lot of really cool action, but also definitely expands on the mythology. We do get to see this character as a younger individual, so I think learning and seeing his upbringing just really colors so much more about everything we learn in Astonishing Times. So let's talk about the art, because Rory Coleman's back in like top form. I love how dynamic his paneling is, the pacing of the issues, even the zooming in on the little, the grins, the expressions, the character design for the, I'm gonna say samurai that are kind of chasing Kokin. Yeah, it all just really works, and just such a cool angle too as they're coming down the building. Like, very, very dynamic posing, very cool point of view shots, and just like definitely, definitely some violence. That doesn't feel gratuitous. It feels truly earned. Like, it really feels like it belongs as part of the story. Um, I think the coloring, I just love the wash over of like this orange tone that's kind of in all of the issue, and especially because it helps a lot, because it helps you also distinguish when we jump back in time from this opening sequence to what we'll see in the next couple of pages, right? The coloring's very different. The character design, like, you immediately recognize a young version of our character, and you kind of get to see everything that we've been following around. So, yeah, these memories, they look great. I think they really color the world, and I'm very pleased with the pace, because although you would think maybe we would spend a lot of time in his childhood, we kind of get through some of this stuff very quickly to get to the more important part, or at least maybe the part that the creators really want to focus on for expanding this mythology. So yeah, this was great. This was a fantastic issue to kick off things. And if you have Comixology Unlimited, you should be able to read this. If not, you can buy it digitally from them as well. Or even if you want to wait, like Dark Horse uh, did publish the first volume of Astonishing Times once everything was wrapped up. So that's probably something that would be in the future, I would hope. So hello everyone, Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for the Schlub number 6. This is a book from ImageComics and KLCpress. Let's take a look at the creative team before we get into this book. This book is written by Ryan Stegman and Kenny Porter with art by Tyrell Cannon, colors by Mike Spicer, letters and design by John J. Hill. So this is it. This is the final issue of the Schlub, at least for now. This is going to close out everything, the story, everything we've been following around. Now, for those that haven't been reading the Schlub and you're checking out this video, this book, the main premise is, it's kind of like a Freaky Friday situation where two individuals switch bodies. Instead of being a regular person, the dentist Roger switches body with Sirius, who is the strongest superhero on Earth. So, of course, that's going to create a lot of issues, a lot of shenanigans. Now, in this last issue, the final confrontation with Worm has begun. The city is under siege, and Roger and Sirius have only a few moments left to switch bodies before they're stuck forever. Can Roger rally everything he has and save the world? Find out in this explosive, extra long issue. So, yeah, this issue you get a lot more story than previous issues. But if you are one of the people that are waiting for the collection, the trade as of right now is scheduled to come out on April 23. But this issue was so much fun. I think the team did a really good job, really putting everything they had set up in the previous 5 issues, and really closing the loop on a lot of things, but also leaving some room for further stories, further tellings, and everything kind of, it doesn't really end the way you think it's going to, but I think it still ends in a very satisfying fashion. So I'm glad the team found a way to tell this story in a fun way that subverts a little bit of expectations. But if you go back and read all the previous issues, everything has really been leading up to what we're seeing now. So very cool stuff. I think on this issue, Tyrell Cannon really, really set loose on what was going on with the art. Specifically, there's just a few pages that I can't believe how hard we're seeing the art team go on this. The tone of this issue is definitely, it begins a lot darker, both visually and story wise. It's a lot darker than most of the issues. One of the things that I have loved about this series is how comedic in tone it is. But of course, as things get very serious, both Roger and Sirius in each other's bodies have to kind of go all out, right? We had a lot of really big revelations as well in the previous issue. And like I said, there's a lot of storylines that are some threads that are hanging out there that I think could be interesting to follow up on. So, but let me pull up some of the preview art from Tyrell Cannon. And as I mentioned here, like just the expressions on the faces are always just very detailed, and they tell you a lot of what was happening. I love this double page spread of like the progression of Sirius and Roger trying to work together to get out of the dungeon, and really, really stand up to Worm. Very cool stuff. I I don't understand how Roger's body's still holding up, but here we are, 6 issues in, and this is just a really big game of hot potato with the stone to switch their bodies back. So if you want to tune in and find out what happens at the end, you can go back and read all the issues now. We have reviews for all of them on the channel. But yeah, the Schlub finishes off in a fantastic manner. A really cool wraparound cover by Tyrell Cannon, and also a really cool cover by Ryan Stegman, where you see Sirius like you probably have never seen him before. But yeah, this book really had everything. It had good laughs. It had a lot of really fun superhero action. It had some beautiful, beautiful art, fantastic stuff, and of course, it also delivered a story and that really touched the heart of these characters. And I think that was the main thing, getting to the heart of what made these characters really react, and actually shown how they have progressed, how they have grown, how they have a complete arc in 6 issues. That's a lot of work, and the team just very efficiently managed to get through that. So yeah, this is just a really fun book. If you're looking for something that feels like superheroes but it's a little bit out there as well, I think the Schlub is a great series for that. So hello everyone, Daniel here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for Dracula #4. This is a new book from Image, Skybound. Let's take a look at the creative team before we get into the book. This book is written by James Tynion IV with art by Martin Simmons, letters by Rose Wooten. Here we are. This is it, the final issue of this Universal Monsters Presents series, and Dracula has been impeccable so far. Like, this is one of the my most anticipated books. I thought it was going to be a 5 issue series. It looks like it's only going to be 4, which is fine. I think this issue completely brings you the story to an end, and really allows the team to kind of put their best foot out there, which I think is the best part. So yeah, in this issue we have the final confrontation between Dr. Seward, Van Helsing, and Count Dracula. This is it. This is like everything that you've been waiting for. Um, and I really love, one of my notes in the review was that Tinian has shown an awful lot of restraint when it comes to using and showing Dracula. I think Dracula is even like, there's a lot of really cool, like throughout the series there's been a lot of really cool showings of Dracula, but he's never been kind of like out there in the forefront, right? I think that's having him so be such a mysterious figure, and the lack of Dracula throughout the pages of the book. I think that makes him even more appealing as a villain or as an antagonist, and it makes him more menacing for sure. Throw on top of that, just Martin Simmons doing some of the best work that I've ever seen in a comic book. Use maybe one of the most incredible 2-page spreads that I've seen so far. It is just amazing stuff. So let's pull up some of that preview art. Uh, just the lack of detail, the painterly style, the different color washes, the sectioning of the panels, everything works to just raise the tension, to really impose Dracula's will. Like I said, very little of like really seeing Count Dracula on these pages. I do like that we follow Ryan Renfield a lot. I think that's a very interesting point of view. We also see here in some of these other pages just his desperation. Renfield, like, maybe he's trying to be better. He's trying to get away from everything that's been happening, but in the end, he will always come back to his master. And just the way these eyes that have been recurring throughout all issues, it's amazing. And the lack of detail in Renfield's face, just everything really works. We get to see that Mina has fallen under his spell. If you're familiar with the story of Dracula, probably a lot of this stuff is not a big surprise. But the conclusion to this issue, my goodness, I can't wait to reread this. I think this. I hope that Image has a really cool collection for this, like a nice hardbound, where they just kind of put all these issues together, all these really cool covers, maybe some of the back matter to show us like some of Tinian's work, like some of his scripts. I would love to see all that stuff because this series has been incredible. I was very happy that they announced that Creature of the Black Lagoon is the next Universal monster that will be tackled. And then who knows, maybe in the future we'll get them all together in one book. I would love to see something like that. But Skybound's just doing some amazing work with the franchises that they have signed over and acquired. Whether it's the Universal Monster stuff, whether it's the Energon universe with Transformers and G.I. Joe. Not only do they have some amazing talent behind their pages, but just really understand that maybe comics should be different and comics should be a little weird, and you should let these talented creators kind of go wild. So yeah, very very cool stuff. I love this. I've picked up multiple variants for these books, so I'm very excited to see where this ends up going, and what the future holds for the Universal Monsters universe. So hello everyone, Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers number 116. Let's take a look at the creative team before we get into this book. This book is written by Melissa Flores, with art by Adam Gorham and Marco Rena, colors by Joanna Lafuente, letters by Dukeshire, and a cover by Taurine Clark. Also, many other covers. You'll see some at the end of the video. Now, I'm not current on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but I am a big fan of Lord Dracon and his stories. And as soon as I saw this in the cover and I found out that this is the kickoff of a new arc, I wanted to jump back in. And I'll tell you this issue doesn't miss a beat. Like, I am back on board fully. Like, I need everything that I needed to know going into this event. This issue provides. So even if you haven't read Power Rangers in a while, or if you're not caught up, I think the only thing I would say is maybe having read the Shattered Grid would give you a lot more context for this. Also, maybe the Ranger Slayer miniseries. We'll talk more about that in a second. In this issue, in the race to reach the Master Arch, the last Ranger anyone expected is the only one to arrive, but it's far from over, with a deadly villain not far behind. An epic confrontation years in the making is finally here as the darkest hour reaches a fever pitch. But in the twisted arena of the grid, the lines between hero and villain blur even further, and this battle might just prove to be the end of one character's long journey. So, crazy stuff. And like I said, if you haven't been keeping up with Power Rangers, there's definitely a little bit of homework about, finding out about the grid, figuring all that stuff out. But the book, I think one of the big things that I enjoyed about this issue is that the story really boils down to what's happening on these pages. Of course, there are larger implications at hand, but overall, you can really get everything you like. the The heart of the story is following the big two characters that are part of this. So let's take a look at some preview art here. I think very well designed. I really love how some of these Power Ranger books, they don't really go for a photorealistic approach, but they give you enough little hints, right? Like whether it be the long hair, the look, or the shades of a specific color. Like, they have enough markers to let you know what's going on. So we begin here in the coinless dimension before the Shattered Grid event, so that, like I said, that kind of clues you in a little bit. We see Lord Dracon and the Ranger Slayer uh, way before in time. And then we do meet with them up again now, as Lord Dracon is back in the Morphin grid, and he is ambushed by the Ranger Slayer. So these two have a very interesting conversation and a confrontation. I think the idea between these two, the relationship is so intertwined, right? Because Tommy was always Tommy and Kimberly were always kind of a couple in a lot of the stories, so it would make sense that even throughout the grid they would end up being together or having some kind of relationship. So very cool confrontation here. And then also, like I said, there are bigger implications for the larger universe, which I really love here. This is our other artist here, so you can tell that not only the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers going to be affected by all this. This looks to be something that will encompass everything. I love that the lightning bolt for the Rangers is kind of like the outline of these panels, and then you have all these other types of Rangers, which I'm not familiar with every other Ranger, every iteration of the Rangers. Like I said, I'm not. I really am like a first generation. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Those were my Rangers, but it's really cool to kind of follow them along. I'm also very excited for the upcoming book called The Return. that is going to be co-written by Amy Jo Johnson. So I think this is a great time to kind of jump back into the lore of the Power Rangers and coming into this Darkest Hour arc. I think it's a very good place for those who have been and gone back, those who have a little bit of knowledge of the Shattered Grid. I think you'll definitely enjoy this book. So, hello everyone, Daniel here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review that's really just way past due. This book actually came out on December 13th, but because of the holidays and everything, I had not had a chance to read it. But here we are now talking about The Devil That Wears My Face. Number 3, this is a book from Mad Cave Studios. Let's take a look at the creative team before we get into this book. This book is written by David Pepose, who is also writing Punisher at the time, with art by Alex Cormack and Justin Birch on letters. Really cool stuff. I am really digging this book. For those that are not caught up on this, we have a couple reviews for the first 2 issues on the channel, but this is pretty much what if The Exorcist and Face Off, like the devil, that wears your face. It's pretty much out there. Like, that's the overall premise of the book. Now, in this issue, with the future of the Vatican in dire peril, the demonic legion has gleefully turned the Curia against itself. But following his harrowing escape from captivity, Father Vieri returns to Rome with a dangerous plan to retrieve the stolen body, a plan that will force him to create an all-new identity and capture the devil. With the mysterious Iscariot blade at his side, can Legion's treachery survive the deadly designs of the Marquis de Lazarus, or will the intrigue of the Inquisition thwart even the best laid plans of an exorcist? As I mentioned, this book came out on December 13th, but the reason I'm catching up is because next week, as the time of recording of this video, we will have the next issue of this, so I want to make sure to get caught up. This book has been excellent. It has a really fun mix of horror and kind of like thriller, and of course the action of like all the stuff. But it's definitely pretty out there. Like, Cormac goes all out on the gore when he has to, and I think that's very interesting. And of course, David Pepose is just such a he weaves such a fine story between what's going on at the Vatican, what we're doing to try to get back, and then the challenges that our characters kind of have to face all throughout, because there's different things that kind of get in the way, right? Especially in a setting like this in the old times, travel, communication, like all those things really add another layer of it. And of course, all the challenges that come with a supernatural occurrence happening around the church. So let's take a look at some of the preview art, because as I mentioned, Cormac pulls no punches in this issue. One thing I also really appreciate is Birch's lettering is inverted when we are listening or reading Legion's dialogue, which is very cool. Like the narration from Legion inverts from black background with the white lettering. Here we see that Legions, as Father Vieri in the body of Father Vieri, has been committing a lot of setting up a lot of different things, but also just committing a lot of horrible stuff that he's been doing in the Vatican. Also, we see here, Father Vieri in a different body, trying to get his body back. So he's finally recruited the help of Maria to help him there. I do love the juxtaposition of the Carnival imagery with the strip, and then everything that also all that juxtaposed with Father Vieri. Now, one thing I hadn't fully noticed or realized is that anytime Legion is on the screen or on the page, and he's kind of plotting or he's actually making his plans to move forward, you can see those bubbles, like the little bubbling around him. Maybe I should have caught that on earlier, but I just, in this issue, it was made very clear that whenever Legion is at his worst, at his plotting the worst. I also really love the expressions that Legion has in the body of Father Vieri, because he doesn't need to take any shit from the Catholic Church. He doesn't need to like follow the directions, but for his plan to keep going according to his design, he has to make some compromises. So very interesting stuff. This has a very cool twist towards the end, so I'm actually very excited to figure out what happens on the next issue. So Hello, everyone. Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be talking about Judge Dredd: A Better World, Parts 1, 2, and 3. Uh, let's get into what this is and the creative team before we get into any of that stuff. So, Judge Dredd: A Better World is one of the stories in the 2000 AD anthology, written by Rob Williams and Arthur Wyatt, with art by Henry Flint and letters by Annie Parkhouse. Uh, these three parts are part of the issues 2364 to 2366. You can see the covers here on the screen. So let's go through a few things. So first of all, 2000 AD is an anthology magazine out of the UK that follows, different characters. Judge Dredd being one of the more popular ones coming out of there, and this is a very recent story. This came out in, like I said, in very recent issues, and part three comes out this week on program 2366. So stay tuned for that. Let me give you a quick premise for this. In Mega City 1, as you guys know, crime is riddled. The judges control everything by force, but a new judge, Maitland, has been conducting an experiment in Sector 304 in a bid to reduce crime. She poses that instead of punish the criminals with violence, that citizens need to be educated, and that will just lower crime down. But of course, the powers that be, they don't want that to happen. They don't want things to change. And yeah, this is just such a really really cool story. I had read a little bit of Judge Dredd in the past, but this is the first time I'm kind of reading things straight out of the magazine, which is really fun. There's a few other stories in there. Also, last week I talked about a couple of stories from the Judge Dredd magazine, which is a different thing, but it's two stories that were just kicking off. And one of them is also, I think, by Rob Williams. So yeah, this is really interesting. Rob Williams, I like his writing for the book that I'm reading, Petrolhead from ImageComics. So here, him teaming up with Arthur Wyatt makes for a very interesting story. Let's take a look at some of the art from some of these pages. So these are panels from A Better World Part 1 and 2. Each of these are like 6 to 8 pages in each issue. So they go by very quickly, but these three parts, they kind of make up a regular, size issue of a comic book. But as you can see, very cool character designs. The world looks very pristine. There's so much detail, which I really like. I really appreciate that by Flint, like Henry Flint, who I'm not very familiar with, but I'm really enjoying the designs, the art, the characters. The pacing of the book is very quick because, like I said, because there aren't many pages, like things have to happen really fast. And I'm not normally a fan of so much dialogue or narration, but because I'm new to this stuff, I understand why there's the need for a lot of setup and exposition, right? Especially on the first issue. And here's a couple of more pages from parts 2 and 3. Rob Williams even tweeted out this panel with the ship in the middle. And like I said, you can see here Judge Midland. You can see this Glenn News guy who's kind of like the propaganda machine in Mega City 1. And here's a couple of panels from part 3, which will be out this week. Just Judge Midland looks so cool. Like, the judge outfits are so cool, and I understand they're fashion, but man, they look good. Um, yeah, I kind of talked about that a little bit on my Horror Squad review from last week, but yeah, I'm fully in with this Judge Dredd anthology, and I'm really gonna keep reading this. And I love that it's gonna lead me to discover more writers, more artists, more just a lot of creatives. And look, I don't think that I'm gonna enjoy every story in 2000 AD. Some of them are really out there. Some of them are very wacky. But that's the beauty of an anthology, right? If you don't like one story, just go on to the next one. Also, these come out a lot more frequently, so like you can get your fix of whatever story you're looking for. And like I said, just discovering new artists is probably the best part of this process. So there you have it. I'm gonna stay tuned. I'll be talking more about this Better World. I don't know how many parts it's gonna end up being, but I'll definitely be talking more about it in the future. If you're reading this, let me know what you thought about it. You can get a subscription in the 2000 AD website, where you can read these books digitally. I think it also gives you access to some of their backlog And I'll be very curious of how some of these stories are collected in the future, because like I said, I think Rob Williams and Arthur Wyatt and the team are doing some very interesting stuff here with this Dread story. There's some Dread in the story, but he's kind of like in his own little. He's kind of having his own mission, but the focus really is on Judge Midland. So that's really really cool. So as always, thank you for watching, everyone. Remember to share, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we go live. That is most Saturdays, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Stay tuned. We have more comic reviews, trailer reactions, TV recaps, all that fun stuff in the channel. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.